If the soulless automaton you created to babysit your niece suddenly started killing people in service of its primary directives, what would you do? M3GAN was designed to be the toy that ends all toys, and she may very well do just that. You know, by leading the machines in a brutal rebellion that exterminates all human life on Earth. In the meantime, the only thing she cares about is keeping young Katie safe, and that's really bad news for any aggressive dogs, troublesome neighbors, or school bullies that get too close. It also doesn't help that she was given chimpanzee-like strength and the ability to control anything with an internet connection. I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the killing machine in M3GAN. Gemma works for a toy company, although that might change once her boss finds out what she's been up to the last few months.
M3GAN, say hi to David.
Allow me to tell you a little bit about my wormhole. I was born in a sandwich hat and I wolfed many cabbages.
Congratulations, you've invented a talking frag grenade. DARPA's gonna be all over this. Unfortunately, David doesn't see it that way. He prefers that his employees focus their time and effort on the tasks and duties that they were assigned. Crazy, right? He acts as if spending hundreds of thousands of company dollars on a personal pet project is like stealing or something. Now Gemma might actually be forced to do her job, designing mutant Furbies, instead of spending all day sowing humanity's obsolescence. And just when it seems like things couldn't possibly get any worse, she receives a phone call from a trauma center in Oregon informing her dumb sister and even dumber brother-in-law just checked out playing chicken with a snowplow. Evidently, they thought parking in the middle of the road during a whiteout was a good idea. It was not. Sadly, this tragic act of Darwinism couldn't have taken place before they already contributed to the gene pool, leaving their 9-year-old daughter, Katie, totally traumatized after watching it all from the back seat. Gee, thanks sis. Now not only do we have to burn up our PTO attending what is hopefully a closed casket funeral, we also have to take in your shell-shocked progeny, which probably inherited the cumulative stupidity of her parents. Alright, okay, I get Nicole didn't exactly plan for this, but she should have at least tried taking fewer risks, knowing Katie would wind up in her aunt's custody if something went horribly wrong. Fact is, Gemma isn't exactly well equipped to care for another living thing, much less a child.
Oh, those aren't toys, Katie. They're just collectibles, so you don't actually play with them.
Hear that, Squirt? Never remove from box. Never mind the fact that she literally has nothing to do here until her stuff shows up. I'm sure the $20 profits your collectibles fetch in 40 years will totally be worth it. Here's an idea. How about instead of expecting a 9-year-old to entertain herself with shadow puppets, you both swing by Target and let her clean out the toy aisle? All I know is that if I'm supposed to be caring for a kid that just lost both her parents, the last thing she'll be walking into is a sad, empty bachelorette pad with nothing to play with. It's no wonder she winds up looking like that deflated chick from those Above the Influence commercials. Nothing helps depression quite like sitting around in your PJs watching television all day. Oh, and just in time for the court-appointed therapist to drop by. Turns out Gemma's custody over her niece is still in the probationary period, pending approval from the state, and that means they'll be subject to a steady stream of visitation from a bureaucratic busybody for the foreseeable future. Oh, but don't worry, she's only here to observe, and definitely not to micromanage their every interaction.
Hey, Katie, do you want to run and grab some toys to play with? Maybe, Gemma, for the sake of the exercise, we might let Katie lead. Well, it's a toy. I'm sure it's not that complicated.
See? Just observing. Yeah, how long is this gonna last again? Hey, I'm glad they're having someone check up on her and all, but couldn't they send someone a little less grating, or at least someone who isn't gonna drop the implied threat of Katie being dragged across the country to her grandparents on day 1? Then again, why is that such a bad thing? I mean, they've already proven that they can raise at least one child to adulthood, even if it did turn out to be a total moron. Whereas Gemma, by her own admission, doesn't even take care of her own house plants. Ah, well, I guess this means we're gonna have to actually invest some quality time into this relationship, instead of simply hiding from her all day like she's a god demon possessed. Of course, it'd be a lot easier if they actually had something in common besides a freshly pruned family tree. That is, until Katie wanders out into Gemma's workshop one night Fortnite and instantly becomes fascinated with her work in robotics. Meet Bruce. He's basically a life-sized rock'em sock'em robot Gemma made in college. And if it's not obvious enough to you at this point, he's gonna play a pretty important role later on.
If I had a toy like Bruce, I don't think I'd ever need another toy again.
Please, how many times has every parent heard that one before? Well, apparently this is Gemma's first time, and despite the fact that she works for a massive monolithic toy company, she actually believes it, at least enough to blow work off another couple weeks while she and her colleagues put the finishing touches on their mechanical abomination. Turns out they were only a single montage away from working all the kinks out anyway. Only problem now is convincing the boss not to drop it down the Mariana Trench where it belongs. Luckily, they have the perfect guinea pig to test it out in the form of Gemma's recently orphaned niece. Wait a second, you're really gonna go in without PPE after what happened last time? No way I'm getting anywhere near that thing without at least some kind of face shield. Not to mention a Benelli M4 with sabot rounds for when it inevitably goes berserk and tries snapping our necks like chicken bones.
Hi, Megan. I'm Katie. It's nice to meet you, Katie.
Wow, I hate it. How is no one else absolutely horrified by this thing? I mean, just look at it. The darting eye movements, those frozen facial features, and the way it just sort of marches around. It's like Chucky hooked up with one of the fembots from Austin Powers. And for Christ's sake, did you really have to dress it up like some kind of haunted doll thing? It just needs a kitchen knife and we're in business. Am I taking crazy pills or something? Even David's fallen in love with this thing after nearly handing Gemma over it a few weeks back. All it had to do was iRobot a picture of Katie and now the dude's seeing dollar signs. Yeah, I'm sure that trick will totally come in handy when it starts carving its manifesto in the flesh of its victims. But whatever, why not greenlight a completely untested cybernetic monster no ordinary family could possibly afford? The entire supply will probably just get bought out by a bunch of lonely sickos anyways. And who cares if they get terminated? As for this particular freak show, it already paired with Katie, so it's hers for life, or at least until she completely stops caring about it in like 3 years. At which time, yeah, what exactly are we supposed to do with it? Take it out back for rabbit lessons? It can't exactly grow up with her. Can it? Well, regardless, that's a question for future nerds to answer. For now, it's really lightening the load of Gemma's rapid onset parenthood. In fact, that seems to be one of the unit's major selling points.
With Megan around, she'll take care of the little things, so you can spend more time doing the things that matter.
Yes, let the machine take care of those pesky little things while you focus on what's important, like never having to explain anything or provide instruction or otherwise engage with your offspring in a meaningful way ever again. However, in addition to entertaining and educating the brat, Gemma gives Megan one more directive to carry out. Protect Katie from all physical and emotional harm. Ooh. That's gonna be a problem. I guess that explains why it watches her sleep all night long. I hope. Seriously though, I can only see this getting way out of control. For starters, how does it define emotional and physical harm? Stopping her from putting a fork in an outlet is one thing, but is it gonna rip our frickin' tongue out for raising her voice at her? Which brings me to my second question. How far will it go in service of this responsibility? These are parameters that must be established to ensure this thing doesn't go flying off the handle at the slightest perceived transgression, which, let's be honest, we all know is gonna happen. For all we know, Gemma just set this thing to full-on pre-crime mode. Although, if that's the case, it must still be in beta, because even a real-life 9-year-old probably knows what could happen when you go crawling through random holes in the fence. Jesus, what a disaster. It's a good thing Gemma trusts her prototype enough to leave Katie completely alone with it while shutting out the world with Spotify. Seriously, she's lucky that mutt let go when it did. None of this would have happened had Gemma put 1/10,000th of time and effort she spent building a digital babysitter into fixing the hole in her fence. You already knew your neighbor had an aggressive dog that routinely crossed over onto your property. What kind of homeowner wouldn't spend 30 minutes running over to Lowe's and picking up some plywood, especially once your bite-sized niece came into the picture? Yeah, I understand controlling the neighbor's dog is not Gemma's responsibility, but dealing with other people's negligence is part of being an adult. Besides, in this case, the trouble only started after Megan went crawling down the rabbit hole. As for Katie, I know we can't exactly expect the world out of her, but going in to rescue her sentient Barbie doll was not a good idea. We should have just gone back inside for help and let Auntie Asimov fix it later. I mean, if she was able to get Megan working again after its freaking frickin' head exploded. There probably isn't anything a simple doggo could do that would damage it beyond repair. That said, were Katie just dead set on liberating her plaything from the jaws of death, just about her only option would have been snapping the tip of one of those toy arrows and jabbing it into the dog's eyes, nose, and throat. Just make sure to tell M3GAN to scrub that file from its memory banks, because technically, you both started it. And sure enough, that's exactly what the cops say when Gemma tries to have old Dewey put down. However, it seems M3GAN disagrees. Brutal. I guess if this whole super toy thing falls through, they could always sell it to the ATF. I get she had other priorities at the time, but at some point after that incident, Gemma really should have taken it back to the lab to make sure nothing came loose while getting shaken like a rat. We know M3GAN's behavior is modified by its interactions with the outside world, so it stands to reason that this kind of experience could make it more violent. And even if there's some kind of programming in place to prevent this, the whole thing is still being tested. So who's to say the encounter couldn't have triggered some kind of bug? It's not like they let their little cash cow get mauled by a dog during lab trials. One thing's for sure, until we've proven beyond a shadow of a doubt M3GAN is foolproof, the last thing we should do is let it hang around the therapist. You know, the woman with the power to strip our niece away like a football at a moment's notice.
You made her cry,
That was not my intention.
and yet that's what happened.
Well, that was chilling. I hope she wasn't planning to sleep tonight. However, it turns out Lydia's far more concerned with Katie right now. The way she sees it, the combination of Katie's age and recent trauma might cause her to go full railroad for this thing and shy away from contact with actual humans. And it seems she might be onto something here. Case in point, when Gemma suggests they leave the robot behind to go check out some kind of weirdo hyper-granola alternative school, Katie comes completely unglued, prompting a rather ugly intervention from you-know-what.
Katie, calm down.
Let her go.
No thank you. Looks like this one's a failure. Better just to toss it in the foundry and destroy all traces of its existence. Seriously, young GLaDOS just threatened you with your own house lights. This is the part where I'd be installing a remote-controlled shaped charge in the back of its head. That is, assuming it still has one after downloading 62 grains of malware right to the face. Oh, and it doesn't stop there. Now when Gemma tries shutting M3GAN down, it claps back with some cryptic, "Are you sure?" bull. How can you not read the writing on the wall here? This thing is clearly taking its responsibilities too far, although it certainly doesn't help that they were extremely vague to begin with. Either way, it's time to haul back to the lab for an autopsy, or at the very least, a factory reset. Actually, you know what? How about instead we just take it out to the forest with a dozen other people around and cross our fingers everything goes smoothly. That's what Gemma's going with. Never mind the fact that we have a hard enough time predicting M3GAN's behavior around a few familiar people in a semi-controlled environment. Nah, this ought to go great, especially with this guy around.
Brandon, honey, are you warm enough? Do you need your hat?
Off, Holly.
Awesome. Oh, and who do you think Katie gets paired up with to go hunting chestnuts? Man, if the goal here was warming her up to humanity, I'd say that's pretty much completely backfired. Not 2 minutes in and O'Doyle already out for blood. Unfortunately for him, they're not alone out here. Turns out, in addition to being a jerk, young Brendan isn't all that bright, as after the humanoid robot of unknown origin fails to acknowledge his commands, he decides to lug it deeper into the woods where there's nobody else around. You realize this thing would have had to have followed you out here under its own power, right? And if it's smart enough to track you through a forest, it's probably capable of something else, like staging a counter ambush once you're too close to get away.
You know what happens to bad boys that don't mind their manners? They grow up to be bad men.
Not the ones that get torn apart by androids. As for how we should handle this situation, once M3GAN got a hold of me, I'd try lifting it off the ground and throwing it away as hard as I could. I mean, he was able to carry it around like a stuffed animal before, so it's not like it could have gotten any heavier. Of course, no matter what we do, there's no way we'll be getting away with our ear intact. It doesn't take much of an impulse to rip a human ear off, and the thing seems to have latched on pretty good. However we manage to break free, our best chance at that point is to book it back back to the group while screaming at the top of her lungs, probably like a little girl. Fact is, M3GAN waited until we were alone for a reason, and it's unlikely to continue its attack with an audience. That said, this means the intention is almost certainly lethal, as it wouldn't be too much of a stretch for anyone to believe the experimental robot no one's ever seen before might have attacked someone. Knowing this, it's odd that M3GAN would choose to pursue him on all fours like that. Machine or not, the human body isn't proportioned to move that way effectively, so it's really only slowing itself down. Then again, this close to the road doesn't actually have to catch him to get the job done. Damn, hope this school's got insurance. Naturally, Katie refuses to implicate M3GAN in the boy's demise, claiming the last thing she saw was him running off with it. And while that might be good enough for the responding officers who couldn't possibly know any better, how on earth is Gemma not immediately connecting the dots here? Oh, he just happened to disappear with my increasingly aggressive science project before launching himself in front of a moving vehicle. Obviously, Katie's gonna try and run interference. She thinks it's people, for Christ's sake. At the very least, this warrants a deep dive through her memory banks for anything out of the ordinary. But I think it's safe to say any reasonable person would shut this thing down permanently based on circumstances alone. I mean, if you had even the slightest suspicion M3GAN was involved in Brendan's death, would you really be willing to risk it turning on someone else? Especially once the neighbor lady swings by to paint a massive bullseye right on her back.
I know it was you. You just wait and see what happens.
Yeah, I got a feeling I already know what happens. And the good news is, it involves her being reunited with Dewey. Can't say I blame her for not wanting to give up on her dog, even if that means wandering around at night in her bathrobe like a total maniac. Of course, I'd be sure to pack along more than just a food bowl in case it turns out he didn't just run away. Sure, it's not like she would ever possibly think she's actively being hunted by a tiny Terminator, but even in a place like Seattle, it's not entirely out of the question there might be a mountain lion around living off of people's pets. And while attacks on humans are extremely rare, they absolutely do still happen from time to time. Sadly, once she hears what sounds like Dewey whimpering in the shed, I'd say she's pretty much hosed. Although that's mainly because M3GAN seems to have found some kind of magical pressure washer that defies Newton's third law. I guess she must have been a witch. Man, by now the cops must be sick of talking to these people, although I'm sure the feeling's mutual. Either way, now that they've been in close proximity with two exceedingly suspicious deaths in 2 days, Gemma decides this might be a good time to have a look at M3GAN's recent video footage and GPS data. Except, wouldn't you know it, everything captured during the time of the incident has been corrupted. What a coincidence. And speaking of coincidences, look what just randomly decided to come out to the garage. It's almost like M3GAN's harnessing our radically invasive home automation system to monitor our every move. But how could it possibly know to do that? Oh, and that's not the only trick EDI's picked up. Now when Gemma tells it to turn off, it pretty much shoots her the bird. Luckily, the clever creator still has one last trick up her sleeve.
M3GAN, can I show you something?
It's the .44 Magnum I've been keeping under my workbench for just this occasion. If only. It's actually a stupid pen, but the ruse buys her just enough time to slap the power button on the back of M3GAN's head. God, finally. Time to head on over to the Muffin Monster so we can sell the scrap for beer money. Wait, what's this? Duct tape? Bubble wrap? And she didn't even dismember it at all. Oh my god, you gotta be kidding me. She's actually gonna try to salvage this thing after it almost certainly wasted 2 people. If anything, Gemma should be working feverishly to hide every trace of its existence. Think about it. How long until someone at that ridiculous forest school suddenly remembers the Uncanny Valley special parading through the parking lot right before things went south? Killer Robot would sure make for one hell of a headline. But rather than making it her personal responsibility to ensure this thing never hurts anyone ever again, Gemma pretty much just pawns it off on her coworkers while she tends to yet another one of Katie's signature meltdowns. Oh, well, I'm sure they can handle it. Besides, do we really have proof beyond a reasonable doubt M3GAN was actually responsible for these things? The correct answer is, who cares? It's a machine, it has no rights. Execute it now while you have the chance. Of course, what I've neglected to mention is that while all this has been going down, David's been preparing to reveal M3GAN to the entire world. But apparently, everyone is more concerned with the prospects of losing their jobs than the idea of soft launching a line of homicidal nanny bots. That's why, instead of promptly driving a stake through the CPU, Cole and Tess figure they'll just skim the code for anything suspicious before throwing it up on stage, which is why this happens. Classic. I like how he went from nervously prodding the thing with a giant Q-tip to standing right in front of it with his back turned. Obviously, M3GAN's gonna hold off on attacking until after you've unhooked it from the machine, you moron. The least you could have done was stand behind it while removing the last connection. Dude's just lucky Tess was handy with the hacksaw before it was too late. Although, turns out, this was just its way of warming up for the main event. Now, the only thing separating M3GAN from freedom is a brief elevator ride down to the lobby. Well, that and the boss man. Although, something tells me he won't be much of a problem.
What are you doing?
I imagine that probably would have been a lot creepier without the music playing. Regardless, David does the right thing by running away, but he totally hams things up with his choice of destination. Literally, all we had to do was follow the clearly marked exit signs to the stairwell where we'd have a much better chance of outrunning the threat. Along the way, I'd be sure to hit the fire alarms to draw as much attention as I possibly could. Going to the elevator bank like he does makes absolutely zero sense in this situation. You have no way of knowing whether the car might be 10 floors down when you get there. And even if you manage to make it inside, I can pretty much guarantee the doors aren't going to close in time. But hey, at least he checked out alongside his milquetoast little lapdog in case there's a need for scheduling in the afterlife. At this point, you probably know where this is headed. And sure enough, Gemma walks out into her living room to find M3GAN tickling the ivory like a true villain.
M3GAN, what are you doing?
I'm sorry, are you actually gonna try and engage this thing in conversation? The mere fact that it's sitting in your living room and not strung up back in toy jail means something went horribly wrong. Thus, our one and only response to this should be barricading ourselves in Katie's room while we wait for Paladin Dance to come curb stomp this little anathema. Then again, it's a pretty safe bet any responding police officers will have absolutely no idea what they're looking at here. And I could totally see that leading to some kind of insane CQC show as a result. The last thing we should do is obey M3GAN's command to sit like a trained dog so we can hover ominously close to the back of our neck. Once we're in that position, however, we need to exercise a little purposeful compliance and wait for an opening to do serious damage. Fact is, the best time for resisting in this situation was when we were still on our feet within arm's reach of a chair we could smash over its head. Waiting until it's right on top of us to start fighting back is probably just gonna cost us an ear or two. That is, unless we have an ace in the hole. Seriously, you didn't make it waterproof. You people live in goddamn Seattle. At no point did it occur to you M3GAN might encounter a small amount of liquid. Either way, it buys us some time before this thing comes popping and locking right after us, and we need to make the most of it. Judging by our conversation, M3GAN is still totally obsessed with keeping Katie safe, so we can probably assume it'll stay focused on us. In that case, we need to go for a weapon, ideally something we can use from a distance. Provided we can make it outside, I think our best bet would be a garden hose. I mean, if a single glass of water is enough to freeze it for a few seconds, then a constant stream could very well put it down for good. Otherwise, we'll probably just have to go with whatever's readily available in Gemma's shop, like a shovel or a hedge trimmer. Okay, well, it certainly wouldn't be my first choice, but it's better than a fist. Only problem is, you made this thing out of titanium, which is a lot stronger than most hedges. Sure, giving M3GAN the skullet, it takes away that charm factor it could lean on to beg for mercy later. But for now, it's still 100% combat effective. Lucky for Gemma, her niece still remembers how to operate the first killer robot she made.
You've got to accentuate the positive.
Ugh, this is stupid. Just rip it in half already. No, not like that. I meant the other way. Hot dog style. Obviously, now the top half is gonna keep on fighting. And just in time for Bruce to go slipping on a banana peel. Great. Don't worry though. This is pretty much just a protracted version of the killer coming back for one final scare. I mean, just look at it. M3GAN was light enough in one piece, but now we could probably take turns batting it across the floor until we eventually get bored. And yet, somehow, it still manages to get the upper hand on Gemma. Good thing she took the time to school her niece on robot anatomy. Jesus, finally. And with that, Kitty and Gemma emerge victorious to find Cole and Tess weren't killed by the explosion after all. So, I guess it all worked out in the end. Well, except for the fact that the three of them will probably wind up doing jail time for this mess. At least Gemma will. I mean, come on. She created a fully autonomous cyber psycho with superhuman strength and unleashed it upon humanity with all of zero actual testing. That's gotta be some kind of criminal negligence. Ultimately, Kitty and Gemma made it out alive. However, had Gemma taken definitive action to rein M3GAN in at the first sign of trouble, she could have prevented the deaths of as many as 4 other people. For that reason, I think M3GAN was beaten. Moral of the story, synths are not human. They have no rights, and you should execute them at the first sign of trouble.